The command of the 3rd Brigade may have surrendered to the Ukrainians. In 24 hours Putin lost 14 tanks and 21 artillery pieces. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on Monday afternoon, May 15, Colonel Serhiy Cherevatiy, spokesman for the Eastern Ukraine Military Command, said that Ukrainian forces continued to counterattack in the Bachnet region and are gaining more territories to the southwest and north of the city. Since May 13, the attacks proved more favorable in the context of the continuous withdrawal of Russian troops from previously captured positions. Ukrainian forces have established new defensive positions on the outskirts of Kurdyamivka, 14 kilometers southwest of Bachmet, and pushed the Russians behind the Seversky Donets Canal. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov said that the 3rd Brigade, part of the 1st Army Corps, of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic was able to stop Ukrainian troops in Maersk, 20 kilometers west of Bachmet Mail. Colonel Serhiy Cherevatiy said Ukrainian troops had passed Maersk. Russian military bloggers went as far as to accuse the leader of the 3rd Brigade of surrendering to Ukrainian forces. Colonel Serhiy Cherevatiy added that as of noon on Monday, Russia could no longer stop the movement of Ukrainian troops along the T-0506 highway between Kromov and Chasiv Yar. It should also be recalled that on May 13, Colonel Serhiy Cherevatiy announced that Ukrainian forces had liberated 17.3 square kilometers of territory in the direction of Bachmet after 3 days of counterattacks. In the past few days, the liberated area has doubled. According to Colonel Serhiy Cherevatiy, even though it was spring, the ground was still muddy and the movement by motor vehicles was limited, so the Russian army had to leave behind many artillery systems when retreating. Most are still usable because the Russians did not have time to destroy them. In the past 24 hours, 580 Russian soldiers have been eliminated from the battle along with 3 tanks, 11 armored vehicles, 21 artillery systems, 2 air defense systems and 16 troop and fuel transport vehicles. Overall, from February 24, 2022 to May 15, 199,460 Russian invaders were eliminated from the battle. In addition, Ukrainian defense forces destroyed or captured 3,759 Russian tanks, 7,336 armored vehicles, 3,137 artillery systems, 562 multiple launch missile systems, 316 air defense systems, 308 combat aircraft, and more. 294 helicopters, 2,720 tactical and tactical drones, 973 cruise missiles, 18 warships, 6,034 troop and fuel transport vehicles, and 407 specialized equipment. 2. Russian artillery and missile depots in Luhansk and Crimea exploded. Russia accuses Ukraine of attacking with British stealth missiles. Sergei Aksyonov, governor of Crimea, created by Russia, said there were loud explosions in Yevpatoria, on the west coast of Crimea on Monday morning, May 15 local time. He confirmed there were no civilian casualties, but that a Russian military warehouse appeared to have been hit by a missile, causing a loud explosion and subsequent secondary explosions. Almost simultaneously with the explosion in Crimea, on the morning of May 15, loud explosions were heard in the temporarily occupied Luhansk. Smoke is visible from the side of Luhansk's Air Force Training Center. Smoke rose over the city and violent explosions went on for several hours. Luhansk is one of 4 regions of Ukraine that the Russian Federation has announced to annex. According to Russian military bloggers, the military believes that both attacks were caused by the Storm Shadow stealth missile that the UK has just supplied to Ukraine. Previously, these areas were out of range of Ukrainian troops. 3. Is the Tyrant of Belarus still alive or has he been born? Sarah Hooper and Will Stewart of The Sun, based in London, have a report titled "Sickly Tyrant Rumors Putin's Puppet Pal Alexander Lukashenko Seriously Ill After Belarus Dictator Seen Unwell at Moscow Parade," meaning, sick tyrant rumored that Putin's puppet friend Alexander Lukashenko is seriously ill after the Belarusian dictator became unwell at a parade in Moscow. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese through Thuy Con's presentation. Prospects are growing that Vladimir Putin's close war ally, Belarusian tyrant Alexander Lukashenko is gravely ill, or even dead. He has not appeared in public since being pulled by an ambulance to the airport in Moscow after attending Russia's Victory Day parade on Tuesday. The Belarusian State Duma announced late on May 14 that Lukashenko was sick, but no COVID. The first vice president of the Duma said, "There is nothing unnatural here, not COVID. One person just woke up sick." Despite his illness, the president made it his duty to go to Moscow, and later in the evening of the same day he organized events in Minsk. Maybe need a little rest, that's all. Exiled Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya told The Sun today, "There are many rumors about Lukashenko's health. He just disappeared from public space, and even the propagandist doesn't know how to comment." Lukashenko, like all dictators, liked to control everything and give the impression that he was invincible or almost immortal, and now, suddenly, silent. It caused discussion in society. What if he died? We feel that many people around him are also waiting for the moment to change. Tsikhanouskaya said that if Lukashenko dies, democratic forces in Belarus should make thorough preparations to return Belarus to democracy and prevent further Russian interference in the country. We need the international community to respond proactively and quickly, she continued. Pictures of Lukashenko at the parade showed him looking tired, with one hand bandaged. Rumor has it that the 68-year-old puppet leader was hospitalized at an elite clinic in Minsk with claims that he was in a medical coma. Putin, who has also been the subject of health rumors, is said to have been shocked by Lukashenko's condition in Moscow and tried to call him after he returned to Minsk but was unable to pick up. Some rumors suggest that Lukashenko suffered a heart attack, COVID-related problems, or even poisoning. Belarusian opposition leader Pavel Latushka said, "He's been gone for 4 days. Sick, poisoned, or badly burned. We, the opposition, are working to implement a plan in case Lukashenko dies." An unconfirmed account today is that Lukashenko underwent nasty surgery that didn't involve his heart and is now stable. Lukashenko's office did not comment, prompting rumors to escalate. Belarus expert, Russian pro-war propagandist Andrei Suzdaltsev, said, "Lukashenko has recovered from surgery. He's not feeling bad, he's recovering." In the days before disappearing from public view, Lukashenko seemed unable to walk less than a quarter of a mile on Red Square after the parade. It is also rumored that he publicly begged Putin to provide him with a wheelchair that goes over the cobblestones to lay flowers at the tomb of the unknown soldier. After he was unable to speak at his own Victory Day event in Minsk later that day, state media broadcast footage of Lukashenko from 5 years ago. New footage of him days before his disappearance shows him walking slowly and clumsily with his 3 sons. At one point, Lukashenko put his hand on his chest as his son Viktor looked at him worriedly, while another son Nikolai clenched his fist. Russian telegram channels have suggested that Lukashenko is ill with a prolonged but unspecified condition requiring surgery. One channel stated, "The Belarusian leader is in the hospital, he is being prepared for an operation, and it is possible that the operation has already been performed." Some reports claim that he requested Western surgery but was unable to get this due to sanctions over his rigging of the 2020 presidential election in Belarus and his support of Putin in his war against Ukraine. Ukrainian media agency Union accused the overweight dictator, who ruled Belarus for almost 3 decades, of very serious diseases of the endocrine system and heart disease. Russian sources claim that Lukashenko had previously feigned illness to avoid being forced by Putin to forcefully plunge into the Ukraine invasion. The Belarusian leader has allowed the Russian army and air force on his landlocked territory bordering Ukraine. He did not send his forces to war. He has also resisted Putin's attempt to fully incorporate Belarus into Russia. In 2020, Lukashenko rewarded himself with a landslide victory by rigging votes on a large scale in an election in which Tsikhanouskaya, who was forced into exile, won overwhelmingly. His eldest son Viktor, 47, once a top security official, could find a way to continue the autocratic Lukashenko dynasty with Moscow's support. The dictator's death could see Putin seek to annex Belarus to Russia, even using military force to do so. 4. Zlenski arrives in UK to meet Sunak on NATO membership of Ukraine on agenda. Volodymyr Zelensky travelled to Chequers in Buckinghamshire to meet UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Zelensky's visit comes after a tour of Berlin and Paris, and with the UK pledging last week to send longer-range cruise missiles to support Ukraine's effort to oust Russian forces from the territory. Mine. Ahead of the trip, Zelensky tweeted that the UK is at the forefront of expanding our capabilities on the ground and in the air. This partnership will continue today. I will meet my friend Rishi. We will conduct substantive negotiations directly and by delegation. This is a pivotal moment in Ukraine's resistance to a terrible war of aggression that it neither chose nor provoked, Sunak said in a statement. They need the sustained support of the international community to fend off the relentless and indiscriminate series of attacks that have been their daily reality for more than a year. We must not let them down. On Monday, the United Kingdom announced it would send hundreds of new long-range attack drones with a range of more than 200 kilometers to Ukraine. Today, the Prime Minister confirmed the UK's supply of hundreds more anti-aircraft missiles and other unmanned aerial systems, including hundreds of new long-range attack drones with greater range. 200 kilometers. Andriy Yermak from Zlenski's office says Ukraine's future NATO membership should be on the agenda. Earlier on Monday, in a video address in Denmark, Zlenski said that approval of a positive political decision on NATO's membership at the July NATO summit he will attend in person will be a timely signal. During the talks, the Prime Minister reiterated that it was important for the UK to continue to provide an overall package of support to Ukraine to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position to secure lasting peace for his country. Surname. This means that the military equipment we supply must be bolstered by training, economic support, tough sanctions against Putin's regime, and long-term security guarantees. To ensure that Ukraine's sovereignty can never be violated in this way again. To that end, the UK has trained 15,000 combat-ready Ukrainian soldiers over the last year. In February, the Prime Minister announced the UK would develop a new training program for Ukrainian pilots to support their efforts to build a new Ukrainian Air Force with jets. F-16, the NATO standard. This summer, we will begin the basic flight phase for groups of Ukrainian pilots to learn basic training. This will adapt the program used by UK pilots to give Ukrainians the skills to fly with a range of other aircraft. This training goes hand in hand with the UK's efforts to partner with other countries in the supply of the F-16 jet, the fighter of choice for Ukraine. 5. Has Ukraine's general counterattack plan leaked? On Saturday, May 13, The Washington Post reported that during a private meeting with top military aides, President Zlenski proposed a plan to attack inside Russia, according to leaks from the media. Communications intercepted by American spies. John Hudson, The Washington Post's diplomatic and national security correspondent, said Zlenski discussed the occupation of Russian villages to gain leverage over Moscow, bombing a Russian oil pipeline. Russia went to Hungary, a member of NATO, and secretly built long-range missiles to hit targets inside Russia's borders. During a press conference in Berlin with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, when asked about the Washington Post story, he said, "We are not attacking Russian territory. We are liberating our land. We are not interested in attacking Russia. We don't have time for that, we don't have the strength and weapons to do it. We are focusing on our counterattack under international law, under our constitution. Our focus is solely on the territories of occupied Ukraine." The idea of Ukraine attacking Russian territory was mentioned by the former commander of the Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB for short. While many Russian military bloggers believe that Ukrainian forces will attack the southern part of Zaporizhia or the eastern part of Kherson temporarily occupied by Russia, Igor Girkin, a former FSB commander, thinks Ukraine will attack Russia. He reasoned that the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions are regions where Russia has worked hard to establish defenses. Hitting those positions is not easy to succeed. Ukraine will attack directly into Russia so that the Russian Defense Ministry has to send troops to save, and that's when they hit Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. 6. Ukraine's Bachnet counterattack is gaining momentum. Newsweek ran an article titled "Ukraine's Bachnet counterattack is building momentum," which means Ukraine's Bachnet counterattack is gaining momentum. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese. According to Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar, Ukraine's counterattack efforts in the city of Bachmut are being consolidated. Maliar reported Sunday that Ukrainian forces captured more than 10 Russian positions in the northern and southern suburbs of the industrial city of Bachmut within a day. Bachmut has been the site of some of the fiercest fighting since Russia launched an all-out invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Russian and Ukrainian forces have clashed for months in the city, located in the eastern Donetsk region of Ukraine, and there has been conflict before. The population before the war was 70,000 people. Kyiv on Friday said it had made progress in Bachmut, although the Russian Defense Ministry denied reports of Ukrainian breakthroughs in the fight for the city. We continue to move towards Bachmut in the suburbs, Maliar said. Ukrainian soldiers operating with superhuman abilities, the enemy has gathered all his forces there and is trying to advance, destroying everything in its path. Fierce fighting continues. General Alexander Syrsky, commander of the Ukrainian army, is controlling the situation. Analyze, plan, make decisions. It was a general who fought with the army in the hottest moments, Maliar said. Mailer said Ukraine's military leadership and the steadfastness and courage of our soldiers had so far prevented Russian forces from encircling Bachnet and achieving a resounding victory. Zlenski said on Monday that the Ukrainian army's advance made up the first successful of offensive actions to defend Bachnet. The past few days have shown that we can go ahead and destroy the enemy even in such extremely difficult conditions, he said. We are fighting with less resources than the enemy. But at the same time, we can sabotage its plans. The Institute for the Study of War, a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, said in a review published Sunday that the Russian Defense Ministry is trying to distract from Ukraine's recent successes near cities by praising their own defense efforts. Anton Gerashenko, an advisor to Ukraine's interior minister, in an interview with Newsweek in February, pointed out the importance of Bachmut remaining under Ukraine's control. Bachmut was a living wall that allowed us to prepare the army, he said, implying that a successful defense of the city could put Ukrainian forces in a position to launch their much-anticipated counterattack. Many analysts say Russia has sought to use the city as a springboard towards its goal of capturing the entire Donbas region, one of Russian President Vladimir Putin's stated war goals. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Foreign Ministry for comment via email. 7. U.S. general thinks Russia's worn-out army has big problems. Newsweek had an article titled "Russia's eroded ground forces have run into big problems, U.S. general," which means the U.S. general thinks Russia's worn-out army has problems. Big. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese. General Christopher G. Cavalli, the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, has warned that the Russian military remains a serious threat to the NATO alliance despite running into big problems during the disastrous invasion of Russia. Ukraine. Speaking at the Leonard Meri conference in Tallinn, Estonia, on Sunday, Cavalli urged Western observers not to jump to conclusions based on repeated battlefield defeats by Russian ground forces in Ukraine. The collapse of the Russian military in Ukraine is something that needs to be studied very carefully, the general said. It was not even. It is easy to look and think that the Russian army has collapsed, or is in serious trouble. But in reality, it's not even. The army has been eroded a lot, they have had a big problem. And they lost a lot of people, they lost a lot of equipment. On the other hand, this force also swallowed a lot of people. And the Russian army, the ground force, is bigger today than it was at the beginning of this conflict. So it still exists. The Air Force has lost several hundred fighters and bombers. They have about 1,000 left. The Navy lost little, cyberspace lost nothing. So really, when we talk about the Russian military, we have to study it in all fields. And we must be ready to deal with the Russian military in the future in all areas. The extent of Russian personnel losses in Ukraine remains unclear. Kyiv claims it has liquidated nearly 200,000 Russian troops since the full-scale invasion began on February 24, 2022. This estimate is generally similar to the U.S. estimate of nearly 200,000 Russian dead and wounded. Injury during the same time period. As Cavalli said, reports are emerging of recent Ukrainian interests around the devastated Donetsk city of Bachmut, which precedes an expected spring Ukrainian counterattack. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry for comment. European officials previously told Newsweek that elite Russian units, including those deployed historically along NATO's borders as part of a vanguard for a hypothetical invasion of Russia, have been deployed in the past. Suffered a loss of 30 to 40%. Some such units are being reconstituted with the help of Russia's partial mobilization order, but the loss of experienced junior officers and professional contract personnel will mean that this position is likely to operate with reduced strength and lower overall abilities. The demands of the war forced Moscow to redeploy troops from the border areas into Ukraine. Cavalli said it was unclear how long Russia might take to recover to pre-war strength, but the relative health of the Kremlin's air and naval forces meant there was still a risk of open war. Wide. He added, "From now on, we need to be prepared to defend our countries and in the case of the NATO alliance, that is to defend the territories of the countries in the alliance." 8. UK Ministry of Defense says Russia's air defenses continue to suffer damage. Russia's air defense system continues to suffer after a core airbase in the west of the country was attacked by several drones on May 3, the latest intelligence report of the Intelligence Bureau said. The UK Ministry of Defense newspaper said the above. Russia's Sesha Air Base, located 150 kilometers north of the Ukrainian border, played a key role in allowing Russia to invade Ukraine and was also used to launch drones towards Kyiv. An intelligence report from the UK Department of Defence Intelligence reads as follows. On May 3, 2023, several drones attacked the Russian Sesha airbase, 150 kilometers north of the Ukrainian border. NN-124 heavy transport aircraft of the Russian military transport aviation is likely damaged. Sesha is a hub for Russian military aviation in western Russia and has played a key role in facilitating Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia also uses the site to launch Iranian-made one-way strike drones towards Kiev. Russian military transport aviation is a well-resourced division of the Russian Air Force, essential for transportation across the vast country. Russian leaders will be concerned that Russia's air defenses continue to be compromised, putting important strategic assets such as the Russian military transport airbase at risk. 9. Mayor of Melatoppel, 90% of businesses in the Zaporizhia region temporarily occupied are not working. The Russian invaders seized all the businesses in the temporarily occupied part of the Zaporizhia region, and 90% of them were inactive. Melatoppel Mayor Ivan Fedorov said the above on Monday, May 15. About 90% of businesses in the temporarily occupied territories are inactive. Only a few businesses occupied by the invaders are active, where the enemy has installed military equipment repair facilities or is creating a picture that everything seems normal. All businesses have been confiscated, Fedorov said. According to him, there are cases where businesses have been looted. The enemy steals the device and takes away the inventory. Fedorov cited the machine-building business and foundry in the village of Obiln near Melatoppel. Now these factories have been completely looted, he said. 10. French President Emmanuel Macron commented, Russia lost geopolitically. French President Emmanuel Macron said on Sunday that Russia has lost geopolitically in the war in Ukraine and is turning into a vassal state of China. In fact, Russia has become a form of dependence on China and has lost access to the Baltics, which is very important, because it prompted Sweden and Finland to decide to join NATO, Macron said. This was unthinkable just 2 years ago. So it was a geopolitical failure, Macron said ahead of a visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zlenski to Paris later on Sunday night. Let's be clear that Russia must not win this war militarily. So it's up to us to see how to help Ukraine counterattack and how to prepare for security in the negotiations that will inevitably take place, he said. I have always said that in the end, the security architecture of Europe will have to fully defend Ukraine. But it also has to take into account not confronting Russia and rebuilding a sustainable balance of forces, he said, emphasizing that, but there are still many steps to be taken before we get there. 11. Former British military commander Sir Richard Dannett said Ukraine must defeat Russia this year or risk losing Western support. Speaking to Times Radio on Monday, the former Chief of Staff of the United Kingdom said the Russian army could collapse in an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive later this year. The massive counteroffensive we've all been waiting for and the Ukrainians are preparing has not yet begun, but it probably won't be far away, he said. If Ukraine succeeds in its stated goal of freeing its territory from Russian aggression, this is the year it must do it. There is a risk that Western support will weaken. There is also a danger that Putin will find that time is on his side, so it is really important that the Ukrainians launch this attack effectively at the right time. If there are decisive blows to the Russians, it is possible that the morale of the Russian army will be fractured and the Russian army may collapse in the way that we saw around Kharkiv last September. 12. President Volodymyr Zelensky urgently asks NATO to start the process of considering Ukraine's application for accession. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday issued a new call to NATO to make a positive political decision on Kiev's membership at the summit in July. Reuters reported that Zelensky made his remarks in a video address ahead of the Copenhagen Democracy Summit. He said that Finland's accession to NATO showed its strength in security, and thanked Denmark and other allies for their determination to support Ukraine against Russia.